This is the Rodney Bull Show, bringing you truth about money they never taught you. Now, here's your host, the man himself, Rodney Bull.
G'day, legends. And what's cracking, money stackers? Welcome back to the Rodney Bull Show. Today's guest turned a problem into a business. After building his own rental property portfolio, Cameron Tope couldn't find a property manager he trusted to treat his investments the way he would. So he thought, bugger it, I'll build my own company. Today he owns more than 30 rental properties and manages over 300 homes through Emerson Property Management, helping investors maximise cash flow and protect their assets. If you've ever wondered what separates a great rental investment from a headache, that's going to be a good conversation to have a listen to, folks. So let's get into it, eh? Cameron Tope, welcome to the show, mate.
Rodney, appreciate you having me on, man. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to have you here, Cover. We're just chatting before we're hitting record. We had a good yarn here today, people. We probably should have shared some of it with you, but anyway, maybe next time we can dig back into that stuff, eh?
Yeah,
I reckon it'll be some good stuff there that people could take away from.
Yeah, my blood pressure's finally back down. So
yeah, we got into a bit of stuff. Cameron, can you just give us a little bit of a short rundown on yourself and your history, mate, and then we'll dig into a few questions, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally from Ohio, small, college town, a few thousand people there, and mom's a massage therapist. My dad's a contractor, and their big thing was, hey, go to school and get a good job. So I worked with my dad during the summers. I was a pizza delivery boy during, the other time, and poured concrete with him. And he was just like, you do not want to do what I'm doing. And so then I went to school. I thought that was the way, to become financially free and set myself up, and got a job in the oil and gas business. So I was a petroleum engineer, moved to Houston, had a good job. The main reason I went that route is because it was 100% job placement where I was going to school in Marietta College. So okay. I was like, cool, I know I'm going to be able to afford my student loans. And this was 2009. So the world was still in a calamity from the, real estate crash.
Oh, yeah.
It was bad. So it was like, please, I think my parents were like, please go into something where you're not going to come out with $40,000, $50,000 in loans and have to live at home. And so I went down, and I'm like, perfect, I can start paying off my loans. Well, within 6 months, Rodney, of being at work at a Fortune 500 company that I thought was really safe and secure, they started doing layoffs. Oil went from like $130 a barrel down to $30 a barrel. And it was almost like overnight. And so I'm like, I'm starting to panic, man. And it's like, what am I doing? I went this route because I was supposed to be safe and secure, and I started building up my 401k and blah, blah, blah. Well, then that, allowed me to take a pause. And I saw some of these old timers around who had worked, years. They were Joe Cool. They weren't stressed. They weren't anxious. It's another down cycle. So I was picking their brain. I was like, what? Yeah, give me the skinny, guys. What do you know that I don't know? Yeah, and they had bought, either 3, 4, 5, maybe some of them 10 houses across or along the way, along their career. And they had paid some of them had paid it off. Some of them had kept leverage, but they're like, the rent still comes in. So I don't care. If I get laid off and it's 6 months, no big deal. That rent check is still going to come in. And that's when I started digging in and looking at everything. And I'm like, we talked about Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right before before recording. And that was kind of the big thing. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad, the rich don't work for money. And I started realizing you're taxed at the highest rate. Your dollar value, like we were talking about, just gets, inflated away. Whereas hard assets like real estate, that stuff goes up over time. Hopefully, usually goes up over time. Just if you keep up with inflation with leverage, there's huge benefits. So got me into, buying some property. And then when I started buying property, I was like, okay, I've got a handful of doors. Maybe I had 5, 7 properties. And I'm like, I want to start turning this over to a property manager or find somebody. Couldn't find anybody to do it. So I just said, screw it, I'll do it myself. And, lo and behold, here we are today. And I don't think I really started taking on clients until 2020-ish. I took on some family and friends, and then I'm like, man, this could be a real business. And now we're, right about 300 properties across the greater Houston area that we manage. And again, 10 years ago, if you would have told me this, that I'd be managing property, be a property manager, I wouldn't have believed it. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it, Rodney. A lot of fulfillment in it by talking to people like yourself or whoever, just about financial education and whatnot. And some of these people are buying it as their retirement plan. They're waking up and saying, my gosh, like, the stock market's crazy. It doesn't make any sense mathematically, but real estate is such a simple thing to understand. It's just like, you buy this and how much money is it going to bring in a tenant? People need places to live. There's no complex strategy or anything. I mean, there's stuff you can make it complex, but it's really just a very simple, the plan is simple. It's not easy, but it's a very simple idea.
Yeah, no, for sure. Beautiful, mate. Well said. Well said. And people have to have somewhere to live, and sadly, situation that's happening in our world now, there's a lot of people that have got nowhere to live. I'm sure it's the same. I know it's the same in your country, and it's definitely the same here in mine in Australia. It's in a bad way. Not
And
real good. So it's a good thing to get into too, in that aspect, not just for yourself and your own financial stability and security. You're actually providing somewhere to live for people and making it affordable for them.
That's it. It's like these dilapidated properties or these properties that are underperforming. It's like you come in, an investor comes in, puts some money, and then they provide a place that people would want to live, want to raise their kids. And we have very high standards. It's like I'm doing this as if, I'm still our biggest client. And so everything that I do from an operations standpoint in the property management side benefits me from an owner. And that's the way I look at it. So it's like, we don't take every single client. We don't want every single client. We're not slumlords. We don't want to work with those people. We want somebody that wants to take care of their asset over the years and then, eventually cash that out, retire, or just, buy more and have some, nice cash flow coming in.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. Cameron, you've owned more than 30 rental properties and manage over 300, you say, for other investors, which I tip my hat to you, Cobbo. That's really impressive. You've done really well, and I hope you keep striving for the sky. What's the biggest mistake you see everyday landlords making, mate, that quietly destroys their cash flow and long-term wealth?
Ronnie, I think the biggest thing is probably they treat it like a hobby. When you go, you got to full ass this. You can't half-ass it. And I see a lot of people kind of like, well, I'll dip my toe in it, or I think I want to do this. It's like, it's not something to just dip in and dip out of. Again, like we talked about, it's a place where people want to live, but people have options, so they don't have to live there. If you don't make it attractive, if you don't respond to tenants, if you don't get a property fixed up, you could be sitting in a really bad way. And that mortgage payment, most people have debt on their property. That thing is due every month. So vacancy, I've talked a lot about that, Rodney, is vacancy is the secret cash flow killer, is what I say, because it just, you don't see it. It's not an expense on your, P&L. It's not like at the end of the year, you see vacancy, but it's there. It's still, you're not bringing in income. So in Houston, it averages about $100 a day is what I tell our investors, because of the way the rents are. It's just about $100 a day you're going to lose. But if you had that on your line item as a P&L, you'd be like, I need to get this property turned over. I need to have my contractors lined up. I need to have the rekey company lined up. I need to have my inspector lined up. And you'd get that stuff, going, and then find a tenant, get them in there. But I see a lot of new investors kind of like, yeah, I got this house. I'm closed on it. I'll start getting estimates. I'll take my time on it. And, then I don't even know the real estate agent I'm going to use, or am I going to lease it myself? So I think the sense of urgency is not there sometimes, because people don't realize that when that house sits, it's a liability. It is not an asset. It's costing you money. It's not bringing you in money. And then you also have, depending upon where you buy, you could have a risk of people coming in stealing it, or squatters. And, it just becomes a liability instead of an asset, Rodney. So I would say that's the biggest thing I see new investors, or maybe people that just started, is they don't treat it like a business. And I'm not saying go out and make sure you go get your business cards and all that crap. I'm not saying that. But you have to have a sense of urgency. When you get that, when you close, you want to already have your stuff lined up. Get everything organized so you can get that property turned. Otherwise, at the end of the year, you'll be sitting there going, why don't I have any money in the bank? Well, it took you 3 months to get this property in service. So you have 3 months. If it costs you $2,000 a month, that's $6,000 lost at the end of the year. That's right off your top line. Gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And that can hurt you hard and fast, can't it? Big time. Big time.
It's a phantom expense.
Yeah. You often say most landlords are running their rentals wrong, mate. What exactly are they getting wrong? Is it a lack of systems, or, poor management, things like that?
I think there are some owners who do really good at management. You have to be firm but fair. You have to make sure that you're enforcing the lease. Again, I'm not sure in Australia or around the world what all the leases say, but in Texas, I'm very familiar with it. So like we enforce the lease, but there are certain things just in America, different states that change, the laws change. So you really have to know that. You have to be willing to say, listen, I don't know how many sisters you've had that pass away or how many moms and dads, but I need my rent. And that's hard for some people to say, right? Because there's always an excuse. I mean, Rodney, I've heard all sorts of different stuff. Like I said, I don't know how many relatives they have pass away. It's like family tree's getting pretty thin here, but we still need our rent. So, that's the thing. I think there's good people that can do it. You just have to pay attention. It goes back to the thing I mentioned, like you can't do this half-assed. You can't look at this like a hobby. You have to make sure that you're focused on it. And I think just people kind of treat it like a hobby, treat it like a side thing. And it's just not. It's just, and if you're buying it for maybe well storage and you really don't care if it makes money and no big deal, then, who cares? But if you're looking at this to try to spit off some cash flow to help you or your wife kind of step away, or you work some part-time or really generate wealth, then you need to take it seriously. And I think that's probably the biggest thing is the hobbyist, the lack of urgency, the lack of paying attention to, dotting your I's and crossing your T's with tenant selection and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Well said. And I guess, like you're saying, you've got to take it very seriously. You're getting in, and you should take it very seriously, because you're investing your hard-earned cash into it to start with. So you should be taking it very serious so that it's actually bringing some sort of return back to you. You're not just investing money just to watch it go down the gurgler, hey. And I guess if you're not prepared or you don't have the time to try and do the management yourself, well, that's when people should be thinking about it beforehand if they haven't got that time to do it themselves or not prepared to do it themselves, to be looking for a company like yours, mate, that can step in and run it for them properly.
Yeah, it's, there are some people like we have, we work with some retirees and we've talked to some retirees who are managing and they keep managing, which is fine. I'm happy to help them out any way I can, but they've got all the time in the world and that's what they do. They're kind of the handyman and all that, which is great. That's perfect. But yeah, there are some people who might be working full time, might be working a blue collar job or out in the mines, and they don't have time to respond to that tenant maintenance request at noon or 2 a.m. And so, you just have to know your strengths too, Rodney. I think some people, buy in and they think they're going to have the ability to tell a tenant, you need to get the hell out of the house. You need to pay me rent or get the hell out. And that can be a very, very difficult conversation. And so you have the people side of it. If you're not a people person, that's not the business to be in. And then you have the financial side to make sure you're, it's like a little business. You got your P&L, you've got your rent coming in, you have your expenses. And I think people would take it a lot more seriously if they looked at it like, okay, I'm buying, and I don't know what the asset prices are, but let's just say $500,000 home. I think the average in the United States now is about $450,000. If they looked at it like
the same here, mate.
Okay, perfect. So
and from there and up rapidly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, same. Yeah, it's just, you could be at $1 million pretty easy now, which, it's crazy. Yeah. But the $500,000, if you looked at it like when you bought that home, you're spending $500,000 on that. Like you're taking the $500,000 out of your bank and putting it in. I think people would take it a little more seriously instead of, I got a low down financing strategy, only put $20,000, $30,000 into it. I think then they would say, okay, this really is a $500,000 asset. Like I have to treat it like that.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. Do you reckon people go wrong along the lines of chasing appreciation instead of cash flow?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I think, average appreciation, and it depends on where you're at. Some of the coastal cities in the United States obviously perform a little bit better than some of the areas in the Midwest or more desolate areas. But I would never bank on appreciation. I always look at that is just icing on the cake. Now, I have made a lot on all my rentals. I've made much more money in appreciation than I have cash flow because, again, especially when you leverage, you're amplifying. If you leverage 2 to 1, and I'm just using let's just use basic numbers. Let's say I leverage 50%. So I'm going to put 50% down on this home, and the appreciation, it goes 5%. It's leveraged, so it's 2 to 1. Yeah. So that 5% appreciation goes to 10% appreciation. So that's how you really start making a lot of money. You get that higher ROI. However, $200, $300, $400, $500 a month in rent is $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 at the end of the year. Whereas that appreciation on a $500,000 asset, 5%, that's $25,000. So that's where the big thing is. It's like you need the cash flow to be able to sustain the HVAC system that goes out, the plumbing repair, the umpteen different things that can go wrong in a property. but the appreciation is where you really make your money over time. And, I've found that to be true. And I do see some people start estimating, especially when COVID hit, we saw a bunch of asset prices go way high.
Yeah.
And I think some people kind of started taking that trend line thinking it's going to continue like that forever.
Yeah.
And there's, I think they got bit, Rodney. Anybody that bought in 23, 24, especially in the United States, they might have seen negative appreciation. They might have seen, things go down instead of, or at least flatten, whereas they're estimating 5-10% appreciation, which is not long-term sustainable. We talked about when we got on here a little bit ago, or before we press record, like the crisis it is for young people not being able to afford housing. So there's just no way. There has to be, incomes have to rise, or asset prices, or I shouldn't say asset prices as a whole, but real estate has to come down, because there's something there that's not jiving. People just, the average Joe or Jane can't afford a 3-bed, 2-bath, just average home.
And it's ridiculous, eh? It should be something that everybody can afford. If you got even just a half decent job, you should be able to afford to buy a home.
If you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to buy a home.
Yeah, without a doubt, mate, without a doubt. And I guess, like, just reiterating that, the cash flow aspect, my understanding, is probably the most important thing, because if you don't have the cash flow happening, well, the property's going to fall over on you. You're going to go belly up, aren't you? But you're not fully reliant on the appreciation side of it, but you're looking for that to happen for you over time.
Yes, exactly. And Rodney, I see people who come in and they, you expect when you buy a car, I'm going to have to replace the wheels. I'm going to have to, change out the oil. I'm going to have, things are going to wear out over time. Like, you kind of understand that, right?
Yeah.
Why do we not look at that when we buy real estate? I've had so many investors, they're like, well, why do I have to, replace the HVAC system? Why do I have to do that? It's like, this stuff degrades over time. It happens.
It's got a lifespan. They're like, everything's got a lifespan.
Exactly. They are more comfortable and can wrap their head around conceptually more spending money on their car. Like, I got to take it in, get a oil change, I got to do that stuff, than they can on a home. And it's just that cash flow allows you to pay for that stuff, even if it breaks even. And then your appreciation is where your real wealth comes in.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. Most people think rental investing is about buying a property, Cameron, and collecting rent, like we're just talking about, mate. But what actually drives a strong performance over the 5, 10 years, 20 years, and what separates great assets from average ones?
And again, I'll speak a lot for Texas, and I'm sure, like you say, there's some parallels, but I see a lot of people, or I've seen a lot of people, again, got caught up in COVID and all these crazy prices come up. And so they started getting, your bidding wars. So they started buying property that's way out away from town, or weird shit, stuff that's like, functional, we call it functionally obsolescent. Like, why is the bedroom over there? Why is there no door on the toilet? What's all this weird stuff here? And so I see that, and then they're wondering why it's not renting. It's like, well, you bought something when we were in a supply shortage, a housing shortage. People are just renting everything. We call it, a little phrase, put lipstick on a pig. Just put a lipstick on a pig and go, and that was fine. But now things have shifted where we're seeing a lot more supply come on. So renters have more options. And we have always had these rent ready requirements, what we call them, Rodney, is where this is what we require out of, if the owner wants to do their own make ready return or fix the property up, that's fine. We do it. We have guys we've worked with for, I have guys I've personally worked with for over 10, 15 years, but the property has to meet this standard. And we've always kept it that way. So we always seem to have our vacancy low. And so I would say that's probably one big thing, is making sure that you're where people want to be. The old saying, location, 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 is just so true. It's number 1, 2, and 3, because you can have even a functionally obsolescent property like I was talking about. If that's in the Times Square or downtown in the hottest area, somebody's going to rent it. It might not be at the top rent you thought, but somebody's going to rent that. Versus you take that property and you put it way out in the middle of nowhere where there's no utilities, there's no infrastructure. That's a lot harder to rent. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's what I see. I see people like, well, I'm trying to buy something. I'll just buy something really cheap. I'll buy something way out of town, or something that's weird, or something that has a lot of problems. And I think when you first get started, it makes sense to get a base hit. Don't try to get a home run. Just try to get a base hit. And don't get taken out of the game. I see people kind of try to stretch themselves pretty thin, and they have their last dollar. They've been told to put stuff on credit cards or this and that, and then one AC system, they're done. And it's a spiral. So it's like, well, then the tenant leaves. Well, now your income's gone, and now you've got to fix that, and you've lost your income, and then you end up selling to a wholesaler or giving it back to the bank, and you're SOL. Now your credit's screwed. Every time you want to borrow, it's just a death spiral.
Yeah, big, and you have to fire sale the bastard, and you're out of pocket big time. So, like it hits you hard from so many different angles. So it pays to do your due diligence firsthand, and that's why we're having this conversation here today, mate. To try to bring this education to people so they can understand what you seriously need to think about before you get into this stuff. It's good stuff to get into, but you can't just come at it flippantly.
That's it. You hit the nail on the head, Rodney. That's well said. And that's it. It's just not taking it lightly, not doing your homework. And, there's a way you can get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? Where you're just analyzing, you're going through. But if you mitigate the risk and look at how can I reduce my downside in this? That's a huge way and a good way to get started. Like, okay, what are the things that could take me out? Okay, an AC system. Well, it's brand new. Okay, that's probably not going to hit. But the roof is 30 years old. I know the useful life of a roof is about 30 years. So I should, before I buy this with my last dollar, I should make sure I have set aside $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 for that. And, you can Google now. It's amazing. Or with AI, you can look up, what is the useful life of this Rheem hot water heater? Mine's 12 years old. What is the useful life of this? And you can start doing on the major mechanicals of a property, you can start doing the rough math and say, okay, I'm going to need to set aside $10, $20, $30 a month just for this. I'm going to need to set aside some for this. And then you're not surprised. And you know what? Worst case scenario, that 10-year water heater lasts 20 and you got a bunch of cash sitting in the bank and you're ready to buy another property. But what I have seen is you don't plan for that water heater. It comes early, or it comes a little early, and then you're sitting there scratching your head, or now you put something on a 30, 40% credit card, or you're begging somebody for some money. And again, it goes to that death spiral like we talked about.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Yeah, stuff you've got to think about. And I guess just expanding on from there, mate, what numbers do you reckon should landlords know off the top of their heads, straight away? And this is just an extension of what we were just talking on, I guess. Occupancy, cash flow, tenant turnover, things like that, maintenance ratio, mate, like things like that.
Yeah, I think with single family homes, it's not as imperative that some of the maintenance figures, just because I think every home's a little different, so it's like, oh, I'm estimating 5% for maintenance. It's like, well, how old is the home? It's a 50-year home or a 5-year-old home. Those are going to be dramatically different. But I do think making sure you set aside some cash flow and just some money to begin with. But I would say, occupancy is one huge to watch. Days on market for the people or the other properties in the area, Ronnie, that's huge. So if the house you're buying, your realtor or whoever you're using says that house, you'll be able to find a tenant like that. The first thing you should ask them is, okay, pull all the properties in that area and show me how quickly they leased, because it's not going to lease much different than all the other properties in the area, you know? And so if they all took 100, 200 days to lease, this is probably not a real desirable area, or maybe it's overbuilt or whatever it might be. So those are the things, like the days on market, the vacancy, and which is the inverse of the occupancy. And then make sure you have some cash flow, and make sure you're accounting for, the capital expenditures, your maintenance, vacancy. Make sure you're setting aside, and the appreciation, you can estimate almost whatever you want. But, I think having a little cushion. Rodney, I had probably, I'd say 25-ish properties before I bought my first break-even property. Okay. And I did that because it was strategic, but I did that because it was in a super great area and I was buying it $100,000 below market value. So I could lose a lot of money, $200 a month, and it's going to take me a long time until I burn up my $100,000. Yeah. Whereas you see people who come in initially and they're like, well, it's break even or whatever. It's like, you don't really know what you're doing. You're going to make mistakes, which is okay. But, instead of trying to maximize every property or your first door or your second door, focus on not getting taken out of the game. The longer you can stay in this game, the longer you can let inflation, which can be your friend in real estate, and amortization, so debt pay down, and compound interest be your friend, instead of when you're trying to get in and out, that's when they're not, you're at the whims of the cycle, whatever cycle we're in.
Yeah. So I guess you're talking along the lines of sort of as flipping as opposed to long-term investing.
Yes, I do not. I am not a flipper. I have sold just very, very few of the homes, and it's because one, I bought for $40,000 and I sold after 10 years. I sold it for 75 and never put a penny into it and rented it out for $1,200. But most of it is, if you get in and out, you're really at the whims of what's going on in the market. What are we in a war? Are interest rates up or down? I mean, it's like, because interest rates drive affordability. So if you don't have a bunch of people that can afford that home, you're going to probably have it sit longer. And again, we go back to vacancy. Every day that property sits, it is costing you money. So huge thing, Ronnie. And again, there are people that make a lot of money flipping. That's fine. But to me, it's a job. When I buy a rental property, there's a couple things you have to do to get it set up right and make sure it's in a good spot. And then as long as you get a good tenant in and you're responsive and you've got the system down, you'll be able to, produce likely successful property over 5, 10, 15 years.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I know here in Australia, and I'm from my studies of your country too, like our vacancy rates here in Australia are like 1% and lower. Even in the little town that I live in of like 10,000 people, mate, like there's just nothing. It is so hard to try and find a rental. Hey, there's just people living in caravans in people's backyards and people renting out rooms and living in sheds, and yeah, it's crazy, mate. It's it's pretty wild stuff. So I guess that's just, you sort of, that can be your friend too, I guess, that real low vacancy rate. So if you pick up a good property for the right price and you do what you need to do to it to present it well, and you can put it back on the market to rent, it should rent pretty fast when you're sitting around that 1% vacancy rates.
100%. And that's, everything's a double-edged sword. Or I think Robert Kiyosaki was talking about there's heads, tails, and the edge.
Yeah.
So
three sides
you got
to the
two
coin.
sides to it. Yeah. And so you want to stand on the edge and be able to evaluate both sides. So, oh, wow, there's really low vacancy, meaning there's a lot of demand here. The other side of that is, like you say, if you're an investor and have a property, the odds of somebody moving out or not renting your property are very low. So buy something, get into the market, and let that, probably length of tenancy be super beneficial for you.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure. Here's a good one for you. What's the most expensive mistake that you've seen a landlord make, mate? And dig into it a little bit more personally. What's the biggest mistake you personally have made, and what does it cost you? If you don't mind sharing that sort of deep stuff.
No, Ronnie, I'm an open book, man. Anything you want to dig into, I'm an open book. The one I've seen an investor make is he trusted this. I know that, I can tell you the property address and everything right now, but he trusted somebody who was a fly-by-night guru. So one of those folks that come in, they sell you this dream. They act like they do no wrong. They drive a sports car. It's all show. It's all crap. And unfortunately, he took a lot. He wasn't the only one that got screwed over, but he trusted this guy, didn't, trust but verify. And he bought a triplex, and that triplex, he let this guy who helped him fund the deal also fix it up and also pull the permits and also do this and and ended up, when we got to it, it was, Ronnie, there's so much wrong. It's probably easier to tell you what wasn't wrong with it than what was wrong with it. And he can't sell it. Oh, it was horrible. Not permit, the sewer line tied into something else. The walls weren't fire retardant. The, electrical, there was actually, the tenant, when we first took over, the tenant said, I haven't had hot water for a while. Can I please get some hot water? And we went, oh, absolutely. Got in there. It was electric hot water tank. The wire went up in the attic and just was hanging in the attic. Wasn't connected to anything. Wasn't connected to the breaker box. Nothing.
Oh.
And you know why? Those lazy bastards, when you went to the breaker box, it was full. They put smaller 100 amp panels in. And I might get a little too technical here, but basically the box was too small. Yeah. And they didn't go with the proper standard size to be able to have appliances and stuff in there. So we spent a lot of money. I just said, listen, you need to either give me not an open checkbook, but you need to give me a lot of control here to get this thing turned around, or we're going to lose all these tenants. And you're going to be sitting here in a bad way. And so I think the big lesson, we got it turned around. It's not perfect. He could not sell that if he sold that today, he'd probably lose almost $100,000. But he's got money coming in on that property. And so slowly, hopefully with inflation and over time, we'll fix all this stuff up. We put, excuse me, a Band-Aid on some of the items. And then as tenants move out, we're fixing up other little odds and ends.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was probably the biggest one I've seen him make. And that's, he trusted this guy, didn't verify. And this guy, he let that guy have control of the entire process. So let alone did he fund it with his money, he fixed up and then he managed it. And that was just one of those where he didn't know what he didn't know either. So it's kind of, it sucks, for a new person, but you got to trust but verify in the beginning. And you might feel like, you're asking the wrong questions, or I feel stupid, I don't want to challenge this guru. But when you're in the beginning, ask away, ask and make sure you're comfortable. It is hundreds of thousands of dollars of yours that is on the line. Do not go without asking questions. And a good person or somebody that is doing this ethically will say, Rodney, absolutely. Let me show you what we're doing. Come on over here. Let me talk about why we're doing it this way. Yeah. And, educate you and teach you along the way. So you build that relationship and you understand. So next time it comes up, you can make a better deal, or you know what's going on. So that's one. Don't just trust what you see on social media, and trust but verify. The most expensive mistake I've probably made is more, so I would say more in business. Now, because, there's some houses that I didn't buy, Rodney, that I think bit me in the rear end. I know one, I wish I would have bought. I didn't buy them because they were kind of cash flow break even. I wanted some cushion. Yeah. And if I would have bought half of those today, I probably, I'd have definitely 7 figures added to my net worth. But, it just is what it is. So that stings. But hindsight's 20/20. I will say there was one property that had a pool that I lost quite a bit of money on, that I ended up coming out ahead. But the ARV, the after repair value, I thought was much higher because my property had a pool. So I was thinking it was better, and it wasn't. So I had to actually bring a lot of cash to closing instead of as much. But now that property's worth 75, 100 grand more than what I paid for it. And there was one other one I'm thinking of a duplex. I trusted the owner. I was probably one of my first handful of properties, and he had converted the back of the house to another unit, kind of separated by wall, put a washing machine, washer and dryer, kind of little storage area in between the two. So you had the front of the house, and then had a little washer and dryer area, and then a door for the back of the house. Well, that was on a septic tank, and that was not permitted. That was not, and I didn't know any better, and I bought it. If I wanted to go in and get the septic done right, it was going to be like $20,000. The lot's so small, you're supposed to be a certain distance from other lots and adjoining properties and waterways. So that one, when I go to sell that, Rodney, that's going to sting a lot. And I just kept it because real estate is incredibly forgiving. So as long as you hold it, like I said, over time, that property, I paid, I forget right off the rip, but it was under 200,000, and I'm getting, $2,500 to $3,000 a month in rent out of that. And it's been like that for a while. So over time, I'm going to have to do something with it, maybe sell it. But that was a big one too. Those two properties, thinking a pool was worth more than it was, and then going into an unpermitted duplex, thinking, oh yeah, this is great, I'm getting a steal from this guy. Well, he got me on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, mate. That's there's some very valuable information right there for people to have a look at. And there's, we all got to learn by our own mistakes, but it's a lot cheaper to learn by somebody else's mistakes. So
yeah, and
valuable information there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's like that's some of the reason I've been trying to do some of this stuff, and I've been doing this for over 10 years. It's like I want to share. I have nothing to hide. And I'll tell you, I make a lot of mistakes every day when it's the most expensive. That's a certain category. But yeah, we don't have it all figured out. I mean, there's stuff where we mess up rekeys, we mess up inspections, we do whatever, but we try to make it right. That's the big thing, is we will do what we can to make it right. And you just learn, oh, this thing broke. Okay, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Okay, well, maybe we should, reduce the inspection from every year to 9 months, or maybe we need to go out and service this once every 18 months instead of 2 years. And you just start working that, and then you slowly develop these things. And just like us having screened thousands of tenants, it's like slowly you see what has happened. Whereas when you're an individual owner, you only have maybe one turnover a year, hopefully less than that. And, you just don't get the repetitions to see what's going to bite you. So yeah, I've got some business mistakes that are pretty expensive, but those, I don't want to give off anything like I'm perfect by any stretch. This has been a long road of just learning from my mistakes and reading a lot of books and learning from others.
Yeah. Good stuff, mate. Well said, well said. And that's all any of us can really do, mate, is just do our best. And so long as you're doing your best, well, hopefully things will play out for you. But you're gonna get bitten along the way. You're gonna feel a bit of pain here and there. So that's just part and parcel of it.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like, you just want to make sure you don't get taken out. Like, there's no way to know everything. When you have 80-90% of the, equation figured out, or of that property, like, I feel pretty good about that. There's some variance here or there. Make the decision. You're never going to have all the information necessary to move forward. You can do inspections, you can, read, but like, you gotta ride the bike and scrape your knees and just hope, don't take that bike down a mile long hill, across, a valley or this or that, but take it slow, but you're not going to have it all figured out. Just make sure, again, you have that cushion to stay in the game. I see so many people not setting aside some money and try to get in immediately out of good intentions, but then they don't know what they don't know and they get wiped out with one HVAC.
Yeah. So you got to do your due diligence as best you can to start with, but definitely don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis. Like, you got to take action. You got to jump in and have a go away. You just got to, because if you don't, well, you know what the outcome will be for sure. If you don't.
Yes.
Nothing will happen if you don't take action. For sure. You reckon good tenants most important, mate? Good tenant can make you money and a bad tenant can cost you a fortune. What does good tenant screening actually look like?
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what I was mentioning before. We have screened thousands of tenants, and seen some trends, eviction rates, credit scores, and again, I'm not sure all the other countries, but we have on our website, we actually post our qualifications. So you can go to emersonpropertymanagement.com, go under the tenant thing or /qualifications, and you can see exactly how we screen tenants. And we update that after every eviction, Rodney. We look at that and go, okay, was there anything in that eviction where we had to remove that tenant they didn't pay that we could have done differently? Was there anything in that tenant screening that we need to make our process more robust? And so we've refined that over thousands and thousands of tenants. And I would say, one bad tenant, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even in some certain properties and sections, it can be worth so much more. And, they damage the property, they don't pay rent, they make your life a living hell. So you got the emotional strain on there. But make sure they have a good job, make sure they can afford. Don't go like by the bank where they're like, hey, you can get a 47% against your income loan. And it's just like, you don't want to give them a little margin of error, because just like we talked about in properties, things are going to come up in their lives that their car is going to break down. Stuff's going to happen that they're going to need to fix. So make sure they can afford to pay, check their background, make sure that, if you're putting somebody in a duplex and they have sex trafficking, or they've have crimes, that we call it crimes against a person, if they've got aggravated assault, probably don't put them next door to the family that you just put in there. It's probably not a good thing to do. So, it's Ronnie, it's pretty basic stuff. It's like, make sure the background's good, make sure they can pay for it. Make sure they haven't over leveraged themselves, and then make sure they haven't had an eviction before. I'm not sure if you guys call it eviction or not, but when a tenant, so if they've done it in the past, they're probably going to do it again, even though no matter what they tell you.
Pretty good odds, eh?
Yeah. We do not. I think it's 7 years. We say you have to have a clean slate. So if it's over 7 years, we'll give you a break. And the reason we have done that is because we've had some kids who come in that, 20 some years old, and they had an eviction. Well, they're 30 now, but in their 20s, they're like, man, I was stupid. I didn't pay and I got evicted. So, we're like, okay, you learned, cool. And we put them in and had good success.
Yeah, no, that's for sure, mate. We're all young and dumb once, eh? We all make some killer mistakes, in them early days.
Yes.
You got to be a bit of forgiveness along the way, eh? Provided that you can prove yourself, that's for sure. But
yeah, and it's just like, again, I know I keep harping on this, but it's like the big stuff. Just make sure you don't let the big stuff become too much or overbearing, and just take care of the little things, take care of the things you can, and eviction last year from a tenant screening perspective would be a big thing that you don't want in there. Somebody who is over leveraged is a big thing that you don't want them in there. But they got a dog, no big deal. Some people don't like pets, but look over that stuff if they've got a good profile. And like I said, you can go to our screening page for free, see all that stuff. It just, to me, it makes better investors, better property management companies. So you guys can have that 100% free.
Awesome, mate. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love that. We were talking earlier before we hit record today, in regards to things getting tough in the economy and that, it's happening, and there's possibly some tougher times ahead. If the economy does continue to get tougher, vacancy rates rise or unemployment increases, mate, how should investors think about protecting rental cash flow?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think it goes back to making sure that you're not stretching yourself thin, making sure maybe you're setting aside a little bit more than you need or than it's necessary, because you got to have dry powder.
You mean?
Yes, exactly. It's like, and you can just peel off a little bit out of every month of cash flow. If you think, you're looking at your property and you're seeing that, okay, this HVAC system's getting a little old, maybe it's time to start sacking away quite a bit of money for that. And I guess I'm talking about for people who have the property. If you're looking to buy, then just be more conservative on your numbers. If you have a property, just start setting aside a little bit out of every month from that, and be prepared. If your property rented in a week last year, go 2 weeks, go 3 weeks, go a month, and then you're happy as a clam if it does rent in a week again, so when you're screening, if you don't have a property yet, be a little bit more conservative. Buy in a good area, get a base hit. Don't try to get a home run. This is a long game. And again, you're not going to, most people don't get wealthy off of one property, but that one property over time, when you add one every 2 or 3 years or once every year or two, that's when you really create an empire. And real estate is very forgiving in the long term. I talked about the pool thing. That if I would have tried to flip that property, I would have lost my ass. But I didn't. I just had to bring some more money to the table, lower the debt, and now that property, like I said, is worth over $100,000 more than what I paid for it. And it's like, that's the stuff. I wasn't trying to make a quick buck, but be a little conservative, buy in good areas, get base hits. Don't take the risk. You got to know when to hold them, when to fold them, right? It's like when risk is on and risk is off. Risk is on right now, so be a little more conservative in your buying criteria. And then if you have a property, just be a little bit more mindful of your expenses coming up.
Yeah. So in regards to that, Cameron, what would be some of the best ways that people could go about actually doing that?
Yeah, I think so when you're analyzing a property, I think, again, you go into some of the mechanicals and start saying, okay, I'm going to set aside a little bit more money, or I'm going to buy a little deeper. You buy on the buy side, you're going to buy in an area that is attractive, that has, if you guys have a 1% vacancy rate, you can almost buy anywhere in the country. It sounds like you're going to have a tenant like that. But then from a financial house of your financial house, make sure your financial house is in order before you go buy that property. Make sure that credit card debt, people pay 30-40% on credit cards, which is crazy. That is a hell of a real estate return. You can't get that real estate return, yet you're going to sit there and pay on a credit card. I don't know what the number is in America, but it's huge. So I'm not sure what it's like for y'all, but it's astronomical, and people are paying that every day, and they think it's okay.
Bleed you dry fast, them things.
Yeah. So, it's like those type of things you can do to prepare yourself for the impending, or maybe the crash, or maybe something that's coming up. So get your financial house in order, make sure your job's in a good spot, or if you're not, make sure, maybe make a little transition there, but take care of your financial house before you go out and buy another property. And again, like I said, if you have a current property, just start setting aside some money every month. And, I think the return on cash, while long-term is not great, short-term, 3-4% is not bad when you're sitting there with dry powder. And I also think diversifying, Rodney. I started out, I was still kind of setting aside, I was setting aside money in my 401k, which I don't know what the equivalent for Australia is.
Yeah, we call it superannuation here in Australia. It's the same thing.
Okay. So yeah, you have setting aside money for your retirement plans, like especially if you're getting a company match, like diversify a little bit. You have the real estate, you have some stocks or bonds, gold and silver, whatever it is, just kind of, maybe set some things aside, because when it turns, it might just turn in real estate. It might just turn in stocks. It might just turn in this. So if you diversify a little bit, I think that also helps you, where you're not relying on a very illiquid asset, which is real estate. So
Yep.
when you need money, that's a bad time to be a real estate investor. Bad time.
For sure. Yeah. And like you said, the gold and silver, mate, I'm a big advocate for that one. Get your money out of the system and it holds your purchasing power over long periods of time. It'll never go backwards on you. So it's a
Yep.
really good, safe place to. And I myself would make the statement in regards to your cash flowing off your investment properties, mate. You should be peeling some of that off and slotting it into exactly that sort of asset, mate, because it keeps it very, very safe and out of the system. It doesn't matter what happens in the real estate market or the stock market or anything, because even in your 401k, you got all your wealth tied up in your superannuation or your 401k. That's tied into the stock market. Stock market takes a big turn, you cop a massive hit on that, So if you get your money out of the system and into safe assets, things like gold and silver, yeah, very,
Yeah.
very, very beneficial.
And the nice thing about those is, the dollar value is a lot lower on them. Or, I mean, I guess you have a 100, 200, $300,000 house, but gold, silver, what? I mean, silver's what, 30, 40, 50 bucks an
Well, I
ounce?
think
I'm
it's
not
about
sure.
75 now in America
75?
in your dollars. Yeah, here in Australia,
Okay.
we're sitting on about 115
So,
for an ounce of silver, and in Australian dollars, for an ounce of gold is about a bit under 6,500.
wow. So it's like you can trade some of that stuff to, at hundreds of dollars instead of you can't peel out a little piece of your house. You can't take out a 2x4 and sell it for $5, $10, right? You got to
Yeah.
go all or nothing. You got to get a mortgage. You got to refinance. You got to put debt against your home. Whereas something with gold or silver, obviously silver is a little bit more I say cheaper side, just able to move it within the hundreds of dollars instead of the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, for sure, mate, for sure, without a doubt. A lot of people, can buy one rental property, because I believe, a lot of people can. Sadly, a lot can't too, but a lot of people could actually get into it if they, put the effort into getting into it. But very few build real portfolios. What do you reckon? What's the biggest shift someone needs to make to go from owning a property to becoming a property investor as such, like yourself, mate? What you've done?
I think you have to have a big enough why. When I started out, I was scared to death that I was going to have, as a petroleum engineer, which sounds really fancy, but when the oil and gas market goes down, you're out of a job. There were guys who had a petroleum engineering degree who were driving for Uber and Lyft. I mean, basically driving taxis. And so, but I was so motivated to make sure that I wasn't relying on that income, that I was scared that I was going to be, jobless. And, I had all these student loans I couldn't afford. So it gave me a hell of a motivation and kick in the pants to do this. And
Massive
that,
risk there, just relying on that one income stream, isn't it? But
it
sadly,
is.
that's what we're all sort of taught to do. Go to school, get a good job, get a job, that's it. So sorry, keep going,
And
mate.
no. And that's exactly right. And it's like, you have the job, and I was at a Fortune 500 company, huge company. I thought it was super safe. Nope. I mean, layoffs. There were people that they rescinded offer letters to that were supposed to come out that just gotten out of school that were like, oh, cool. I'm marching. They're not looking at other companies. They're marching in thinking they're going to, get into this big company with great benefits, good salary, cut off like that.
Oh.
So I think that was the big thing, Ronnie, is you have to have, and I know that sounds cliche and it's not really, specific, but I do think you have to have a big enough reason why. We have an owner who bought a home on a 15-year mortgage, and the initials of the LLC are his son's, because he said that's for him. When he turns 18, he wants to give him that property, whatever it's worth, whatever debts against it, that's what it's going to be. And so, stuff like that, or you invest for retirement, or what is it? But if you just, again, it goes back to kind of the flippant thing of just doing it as a hobby. But I think what will set you on the path to be wealthy is if you have to want it. It doesn't happen by accident. You're not just accidentally going to run into, oh, look, a great real estate deal at 50 cents on the dollar. Oh, look, another great real estate deal at 50 cents on the dollar. Like, you have to orchestrate that. You have to tell everybody. I told the first property I bought from a family friend because I was telling everyone around me, probably annoying the shit out of, but I was telling them that's what I wanted to do. I am going to be a real estate investor. I want to buy a property. And what do you know? A family friend said, well, actually, I'm retiring and I want to sell this thing. I didn't have to compete with any buyers. I didn't have to worry about it. She was a family friend. So we, I trust her. We talked through. She's like, here are the downsides. Here's this, that. We closed, no realtor commissions. I mean, Rodney, but that was from, could call it luck, but you can also call it like me going out and kind of creating it in the universe. I'm not saying
for sure, mate. You were putting it out there into the universe, what you wanted.
Yeah. And it's like, I think, what do they say? The harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. and I think that's it. It's like you go out there and you put it out in the universe. You say what you're going to do. And, I don't have a vision board, but it's like stuff like that where you're like, you have a motivation, you hear, my grandfather smoked for decades. He had one triple bypass surgery, never smoked again, never smoked another cigarette. And his wife, my grandmother, smoked, and he never touched another cigarette because he had the motivation to do it. And before, he's like, oh, I tried, how many times do you try to quit? So it's like, you got to have something that lights a fire under your ass to say, I'm buying a deal. I'm not going to buy a bad deal, but I am a real estate investor, or I'm going to create generational wealth. And then the universe, I'm a big believer in karma. And what you put out, you get it. And it's like, stuff will slowly start opening up, and you almost don't have the lens for it if you're not looking for it, right? Like you can see something and it doesn't look like an opportunity because you're not looking for it. And it might be there the whole time. So that's my spiel.
Love it, mate. Love it. That's good stuff. Really good stuff. What do you reckon separates rental property that simply exists from one that generally creates long-term wealth, mate? Is it just the cash flow and the appreciation, or is it like debt reduction and management overall of that property, or what?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So there's a handful of different ways you can make money in real estate. Like you said, you have the cash flow, what it's spitting off every month in your pocket. You have appreciation, how much the property is going up. You have depreciation, which is the tax benefits that you get from the property. You also can buy below market value. Like I mentioned, that property that I bought was cash flow even or break even, maybe a little negative, but I bought it with $100,000 below market value. And that's not to brag, but that's just like, that's the stuff that you can do. It's hard to go buy a stock or gold and silver or one of those things that's 50% below market value or $100,000 below market value. Whereas you can find those deals in real estate a lot because some person's motivated. They're not motivated by money. They're motivated by time. Maybe they got it inherited and they don't really care what it's worth. Their money's not their main driver. So you can buy it below market value, and then you can increase the value by fixing it up and improving it. If you go and you buy a 3-bed, 1-bath and you put in another bathroom, maybe you've added $25,000, $30,000 in value, and it took you $5,000 to do that. Or add square footage, or, it's got Formica countertops and old carpet, and you put in new hardwood floors and granite or quartz or whatever the flavor is. But, I think looking at that in each aspect, because again, you can have something that maybe is not cash flowing a lot that you bought below market value and it's a value add. So you're going to get benefit there. But there's several different ways. And I think understanding what your strategy is. Are you wanting to have the income to be able to walk away from your job? Are you wanting to have, hey, listen, I don't need the income now. I'm working, I'm in my years. Like I want appreciation. I want that pot to be really big in 30 years. So you're going to play a little bit more on the appreciation. You're going to be okay with a little less money. Maybe you're really super handy. And so you say, okay, I'm going to buy all these dilapidated kind of crappy properties and I'm going to improve them. I'm going to drive the value up. So, and I can't believe I haven't mentioned this. I talk about this a lot, is the competitive advantage. So what is your competitive advantage? What do you have whatever you're investing in? What is your competitive advantage? Because if you don't have one, you should buy gold, silver, stocks, bonds, whatever it is, and that's it. But if you have a skill that you can use, if you're willing to go out and try to knock on doors and find deals, or you have a lot of money, or maybe somehow you have a friend or some family member that's going to give you cheap financing, like use your competitive advantage, use that. And that might help you select how that rental performs over time, or how you think that rental is going to set you up for your goal.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Love them words. That's really well said, and competitive, like you said, if you're half handy and you're willing to do some of the work yourself, or you've got a good friend who's a chippy or a builder or something like that you can work in with and offside them, so that something like that would be a competitive advantage, I guess.
100%. Ronnie, it could be anything. I mean, it's just like, you being local, people invest out of state all the time. It's like, but the people who are local, you have a little bit of a competitive advantage there because, or if the area or town you grew up in, if you've lived there for 20, 30 years, you know that as soon as you go on this side of the street, that's not a good area, but you stay on this side, this is great. So you want to buy over here, let all the chumps buy on the other side who are investing from 5,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is, use it. Don't look at it like, oh, I'm privileged because, I have a friend that will lend money, or I have a friend that's a builder that's going to help me out. Leverage that. I mean, that is your competitive advantage. Use your skills. We see it in the wild with animals. We see it everywhere, but somehow people think that I don't want to use that. I want to do it all on my own. No. I don't know if anybody who has anything worth a damn.
We can't do anything in this life by ourselves, mate. It's all teamwork.
Yep.
Hell yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we're starting to run up on time, mate. So if we maybe just run through one or two quick ones that you can smack out some fast answers to, and I'll stop burning up your precious time on you today.
No, Rodney, this has been fun, man. And you can tell I'm sorry. I get excited. I start getting animated and go off on all sorts of stuff. So don't be bashful about bringing me back to whatever the question was.
No, that's good, mate. I like that excitement, mate, because it's something that excites me too. And I hope it's definitely exciting our audience, mate, because this is great stuff that you're sharing with us here today. And I really appreciate it. Really do.
No, I appreciate
it. If someone buys a rental property today and simply just leaves it on autopilot, Cameron, what do you reckon is the biggest mistake that they're making by doing that?
If you leave it on autopilot, if you just, let it go and see what happens, I think you're going to be at the whims of just sheer luck or sheer, odds. And so if you think, and I did this when I first started, it was a mistake. I had a rental property that I thought, I can even tell you the address, 7511 Marisol Drive. And I thought that the tenant didn't respond. He would never put in a maintenance request. He paid rent on time. It came on time every month. And you know what I thought, Rodney? No big deal. That property is perfect. That tenant pays. I don't need to go look at it. Well, then, I had, was reading. I'm like, okay, I need to start doing an annual inspection. So I texted him and said, hey, buddy, I'm going to be over. Give me some time in the next couple of weeks. I want to just come over, walk the property, make sure it's all good. I never heard from that guy again.
Yeah.
I kept calling, following up and said, buddy, I'm coming. You only have to give 24 hours notice in Texas. I said, I'm coming tomorrow. After I haven't heard. I'm coming in, blah, blah, blah. I went in there. It would turn into a marijuana grow house. He had the ductwork.
Any wonder he wasn't having trouble paying rent.
Exactly. So, he had pulled the ductwork out. He had all these lights and all this stuff around, but I never went over. And that is, if you leave your property on autopilot and you think, similar to trust but verify and making sure that just because they drive a fancy sports car doesn't mean shit. I thought it was fine, but you have to do your due diligence. You follow a system of some sort. And just because you're not hearing from tenants doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely need to do them inspections. The valuable lesson learned there, mate. Like, I'm pretty sure you weren't expecting to find that when you rocked up to do an inspection on that house.
I know. I'm like, damn it. I wish I would have never, opened the box, right? Just left that cat in the bag and rode that property out for 30 years. Probably been great. But yeah.
That's a good story, mate. That's a bloody good story. What do you reckon? Is rental property really passive income? Because this is a story that you hear a lot, or is it just one of the biggest myths that there is in investing? Because through my research into it, there's definitely aspects of it that would classify it as passive income. And I think there's the other side of the coin there that not so much.
Yeah, I think passive income, when I hear that, or when I initially heard that, I was thinking that meant I don't have to do anything and I'm going to make money. But what I think real passive income is asymmetric use of your time or asymmetric return on your time. Meaning I put in a little bit of effort and I get a bigger return. Well, so if you think about it, let's just say somebody makes $100,000 a year and they spend, the average work year, I think, is 2,080 hours or around 2,000 hours. So you make what, about $50 an hour? That's what you're putting in and what you're getting out. And some people spend a lot more at work. Whereas a rental property, I guarantee you're going to spend a lot less time than that if you add your $50 an hour up, and you're going to make a lot more over time. So I would say that asymmetric thing is definitely true with real estate. However, there's still stuff to be done. So it's not, if you think passive means I'm never going to do anything, I don't want to kick my feet up, that's not true. But if you think passive means I'm not going to have to actively work for my income, we go back to Robert Kiyosaki, the rich don't work for money. That's true. That you don't have, you know, as long as the tenants are good, you've done your inspections, the rent's coming in, you feel like it's mailbox money. It's Joe Cool, but things do come up. You have to stay on top of stuff. And I think, you know, it goes back to making sure you've set things up in the beginning, inspections, how you're going to handle a tenant paying rent, how you're going to get them back online, various things, how frequently you're going to service the HVAC system, and handling things when they're small or on a schedule so that things don't come up as frequently, you know, ad hoc and eat up a bunch of your time. But no, it's not kick your feet up by any stretch, but it is asymmetric effort versus return.
Yeah. No, excellent, mate. Thanks for clearing that up. That's well said. That's well said. We'll rip through two more quick ones, mate, eh? What's something that landlords obsess over that actually doesn't really matter all that much, you reckon?
That's a good one. What do landlords obsess over? It doesn't matter all that much. I would say I've seen quite a bit of, I actually had an owner who wanted to put that the tenant could not turn the AC below 65 degrees because because they were worried that they're going to use the system. It's going to be, you know, so a strain on it. It's going to reduce the useful life, blah, blah, blah. But I told him, I said, listen, we can put whatever you want on the paper. But do you think I'm going to go over there and check the AC system every day? Are you going to go over and do it? So I think there's certain things where it's like you have to be practical. These are people. If you don't trust them to take care of the AC system, you're not going to trust them to live in the rest of the house. So I see people try to do that in the lease, like, oh, I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to add this, I'm going to add that. And that you can put whatever you want. I mean, in court, you might as well wipe your ass with some of that stuff. And so I think, you know, I see a lot of people focus on that, like, well, if I have it in the lease and it says that, and I'm not saying leases don't matter. I don't want to take that away, but I see a lot of landlords focus on, hey, I want to put this in here, and I want you to make sure it's like enforcing that is damn near impossible. I'm not going to go by every time and make sure they put salt in the water softener. You can't go by every time and do that. You can't make sure that they, you know, don't leave the air on or shut the water shut off. So I see people like focus on that almost to the point where it drives out good tenants, because good tenants are like, I don't need somebody telling me or wanting to stop by, check my air conditioning or tell me how to use my AC system. Yeah. So I'd be mindful of that.
Too controlling.
Yeah, too much. If that's you need to get out of the business, because Rodney, what are the odds that in all the properties I have or manage that somebody's screwing something up right now?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. And if I sat here and thought about that all day, or how can I scheme around, you know, making sure that the AC extends,
drive yourself mad.
Going to go crazy. So yeah, that's the thing. Don't get so drawn in some of the details that you drive away good people. Don't get so rigid that in some of that you drive out really, really good tenants.
Yeah. You got to wear a little bit of stuff, eh? You got to have a bit of flexibility for sure. Yes. For sure, mate. Thanks for that, Cameron. All right, last one, mate. If you lost your entire portfolio tomorrow and you had to start again, what's the first thing that you would do?
No money. Like fresh from lost everything.
Yeah. If it all blew up on you, mate, I guess, you know, the one good thing you've got is the knowledge that you've got now. But what would you do? What would you do if it all got taken away from you tomorrow?
I think I would just start hitting the streets again. I would go do the bandit signs. I don't know if you guys have seen those bandit signs that say fast cash for your house and call number.
Okay.
I did that in the beginning, and I was putting those out at 5 o'clock in the morning before the sign people would come and cut them down or remove them so I could get some visibility. But I would just go start using, if I lost all my money, I would go start putting the effort in, because, you know, they talk about bringing a couple things to a deal. You either bring time, money, or experience. So you can bring that experience in and say, listen, I'm going to go find the money, and I'm going to go leverage or use somebody who has a lot of money and doesn't have time. Or you're going to be the experienced person that pulls this together, these people together who have time and money, maybe or to create an opportunity or create a business or create something. But I would just start hitting the streets, and then once I find a deal, call my some lenders, say, listen, I'll give you half of whatever. I would give away a lot in the beginning because I would want to get scale quickly. So then once you build up a reputation with that lender or build up a reputation with whoever's financing, whoever's helping you out, I would give up a lot in the beginning because I know that I'm gonna do this over the long term. And then I would just keep rocking and rolling from there. I would be as gritty and scrappy as I was 15 years ago. I'd probably take a little bit more risk than I do now. The properties I buy now are very few and far between, but when I do buy them, I get a lot of equity, or there's a big thing in them because I don't need any more properties. So I would probably take some more risk on deals. And yeah, I would let my effort and experience, because I don't have any money, allow me to get in and start over. And I wouldn't be afraid. I see a lot of people when they start out, they're afraid that, well, I don't want to give up that much money. I don't want to pay 12% interest to a hard money lender, or 15 or whatever it is. Yeah, but you're not, again, one deal is not going to make you wealthy. You've got to multiply that. And the knowledge you're getting from doing that first deal, you're going to be able to apply to the second deal. So don't be as afraid, or as, if you bought so closely that you can't pay 12 or you can't pay 13%, you can only pay 12% interest, you probably shouldn't buy the deal.
Yeah. You don't want to be running that close to the wire, eh?
No. So be willing to give up something to continue that march, to continue building. Don't think you have to make it all in one fell swoop.
No, that's awesome, mate. That's awesome. And I guess one takeaway from out of that, and most of all, is just don't give up, eh? And more than anything, just keep putting your foot forward and taking action, mate. You might have lost it all and then feel like that life's not even worth fighting for anymore. But you got that knowledge there, and you can just keep going after it. Just get after it.
Right. Ronnie, when we were, the rentals didn't make a lot of money in the beginning, and I was spilling that back in the business. I was living in a 400 square foot apartment I was renting from a friend. I lived like a vagrant, and I was pouring all my money into real estate. And if I had to, I would have picked up a second job at Taco Bell. I would have done whatever it takes. And that's why I mentioned before, when you were talking about something people need to get started, you got to light a fire under your ass in some form or fashion. Because, I hit snooze in the morning now too. But I can tell you 15 years ago when I was starting, when that alarm went off, I hopped my happy ass out of bed. I was at the office by 5 o'clock. I was out of there at 3. And at 3:20, I was back home sitting down looking at real estate deals until 9, 10 o'clock that night. And I did that for 2 years, worked 100 hours a week. But you got to find something that gives you that kind of motivation. I don't work like that like I used to, but I was happy when I did it. I knew I was marching towards something. And I think you got to find something that gets you that passionate about it. And that will help you. And if you think about whether that's creating wealth for you, your family, your kids, legacy, retiring your wife, allowing somebody to go part-time, whatever it is that's going to get a fire in your belly and get you moving, that's what I think you got to cultivate first.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Love them words. And that's exactly what we're here about on the Rodney Bull Show, mate, is about, finding the truth about these things, about money and investing and finances, because it can be hard to find the truth, and fighting to find your why for what you want why you want financial freedom, mate, and ultimately, more than anything, building legacy, mate, because we don't get out of this life alive. So hopefully you can build some legacy to leave behind for coming generations, so things can improve for them, and they can keep building on it and going from there.
Yeah, and in the beginning you don't really understand, or if you're young and listen to this and you're like, I've heard that crap before. I did too, but I can tell you, looking back, that really, it allows you to push through the stuff that's hard if you have a big enough why.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. All right, legends. That's been a bloody cracking conversation here with Cameron today. And I reckon you brought some really good insights into property investing and what it takes to know the ins and outs of it, and why it is so lucrative and beneficial for you to be able to try and build financial freedom and ultimately build legacy, mate. Can you let people know before we cut off here today, mate, where they can find you and all the places out there that they can get some information from you, mate?
Yeah, Ronnie, we again, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Even the almost hour we spoke before we started recording. So it's been a pleasure, man. And I would say, guys, just if you go to emersonpropertymanagement.com, again, I don't know where you're at in the world listening to this, but we have so much free stuff on there. Like Rodney, I'm very big into education. So you can go on there. We have free rental analysis, return on equity tools, return on investment tools, vacancy loss tools, all sorts of stuff. But I think just going in there and, exploring, depending upon what your situation is and what you need. We have a lot of stuff on there. And so, or you can just type my name into Google and find me that way.
That's awesome, Cameron. Beautiful, mate. Well, we'll make sure all the links are in the show notes below, mate. And people, I would strongly suggest that you jump online and have a look into it. Even though some of you might be in different parts of the world, there's still a tremendous amount of value and vital information that you could get from off of Emerson Group website. So get on there, folks, and have a look, eh? And if you like the show, you know what to do, eh? Hit the buttons, like and follow, and share it with another fellow money stacker, eh? And keep on building, fighting for truth, freedom, and legacy. Keep on stacking, folks. Cheers, legends.
This has been another episode of the Rodney Bull Show, a Rebel Edge production. Please share with your family and friends, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.